Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Oh, the Drew. Welcome. I don't do it very well. I'm not. No Drew today. He is probably sleeping. It's late. It's middle of the night in the beautiful Greek islands. Going to rip out a quick solo one so we can keep the podcast feed filled. If you want to join me live here in the YouTube, I'd appreciate that too. Any questions, comments, additions, thoughts? By all means, I'm going to need you guys to carry me. You are going to be that set of footprints in the sand. Big news, I suppose, is the benching. Gotta feel like that was fine. Felt like that was the right move. I liked it. The front office, the front office got involved. So they said, well, yeah, that's not the kind of thing I think that your first year head coach is allowed to just go and do without some okay from the front office, which is even more damning. So it feels like probably moving on, which is fine. A lot of forces at play there because on one hand, you don't want to lose the locker room. On the other, I've seen some people say, well, why don't you just keep them out there in tank so you can get the number one overall pick? Like, that doesn't fly with the team. Really lose the locker room. Like, there's so many things going on. You got a coach getting his first shot at being a head coach. He doesn't want to screw that up by just, leaving a permanent black stain on his permanent record there by having a terrible year. Yeah, I gave Drew the Bryce Young treatment, just benched his ass out in Europe. I didn't bring the cowboy hat. That's a picture from at home. I don't even know if it's a cowboy hat. It's made out of felt. I bought that in Napa when we got drunk and went shopping because it was raining. I suppose we'll get to the Rams stuff when we get to the Rams, but yeah, that was fun. Twitter was wild for a while this morning. Makes for entertaining content when we have something big like that. So just ripping through the week, I'm going to try to spend like a minute on each game. I don't want to do a long podcast today. It's hard without somebody to bounce things against it. So Buffalo, Miami, 31-10. It feels shitty dogging on Tua, but both, like, two of those interceptions are pretty inexcusable. He looked kind of bad at time. It was a weird game because it's happened so long ago, and you go back and look at this, and like the main thing in my head was, man, Cook just wrecked him. Like, Cook was all over them. It felt like really analogous to what we saw in Green Bay. And then you go look, he touched the ball 12 times. It's just he had the 3 touchdowns. So two teams knew that they could go into the game, run the ball, control the clock, get a win. Both teams, Green Bay and Buffalo, did a good job of that. Obviously, one has a much better quarterback. Josh Allen, clearly the best quarterback in the division, especially with Tua out. They did sign Snoop Huntley, but they came out and said that Skyler is getting the start. I don't think you want to bring a guy in off the streets and say, hey, learn this Miami offense, like in short order. It doesn't seem like a super good idea. And they said it was depth anyway, so I'm fine with Snoop coming in for depth. I have no idea. I'm not going to give long opinions on whether Tua should, retire or whatever. It sounds like he's not going to. So we'll see. Hopefully he comes back and we don't see that sort of thing again. Teron Armstead and Rob Jones, both linemen, left with some shoulder injuries worth checking. Jeff Wilson Jr. had an oblique injury, which maybe isn't the biggest deal seeing how far down the chart he is, but with Mostert out, that kind of leaves them thin, just Achane and the rookie. And then Buffalo did have, Bernard, the linebacker, left with a pec injury, did not return. Worth keeping an eye on. They have a long week, though. I'm not sure I'm going to even go in rotation number. I'm just going to go in the order I put for my notes for the weekend. New Orleans beat the ever-living shit out of Dallas, 44-19. 7.7 yards per play, with the second half being mostly garbage time, is a pretty damning number. Kubiak matters big. Everything he's done, all these guys that were just like borderline, hey, we've seen flashes of Carr. Hey, Olave could be a number one. Hey, Kamara's not that old. Like, all of these guys they're just getting the most possible out of everyone. And it's crazy. You got a rookie playing tackle who's playing out of his guard. 3 or 4 of these rookie offensive linemen are playing really well right now. Alt, Fuaga, Gosh, I'm trying to think of the other one that we'll get to him. Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh's starting one as well. There's a bunch of rookie linemen playing pretty damn well. And yeah, at least there's one fun team in the NFC South right now because I mean Tampa Bay might be a little fugazi and Atlanta, I guess we'll find out tonight. But yeah, that's not a whole lot to say there outside of the Cowboys got put in a bad situation right off the boot, and it was kind of hard for them to get back into things with some of the turnovers and dead drives that they ended up with. Taysom Hill did go to the hospital with a chest injury. I don't know a ton about what happened there. It said avoided anything real serious, but I didn't get a ton of details. I'm not so sure he plays. If it was a chest injury that put him in the hospital, there were reports that Jake Ferguson will be back this week for Dallas. That would be helpful. They've gotten a lot of their offensive line, but it was a tough defense, and apparently the greatest show on turf part 2 they took on offense. So, yeah, offensive coordinators matter. I've sent this to a few people who are Bears fans. That was somebody they looked at interviewing and hiring before they took Waldron. So it hurts even more if you're sad about the Bears offense right now, which some of it is just offensive line guys. Next one up is the Tampa Bay Detroit. Tampa Bay 20, Detroit 16. This is one of 2 live bets that I made. I make a lot of stupid little live bets, but this is one I had some conviction behind. I was happy to get an over 50 at one point. In fact, Tampa Bay went and scored immediately after that. It was up to 54, maybe 52, something and change. And like 10 minutes later, I'm looking at 43 on the board. Super sad. Just couldn't get it done. It was a lot of Detroit shooting themselves in the foot. Detroit was probably the better team. Really impressed with the trench play from both sides of the ball with Detroit. They had 5 sacks, not allowed. Obviously, Hutchinson's a stud. But yeah, it was a weird box score. Like if you had Detroit, if you had the over, it was kind of just a disaster up and down. They were 10 of 22 on 3rd and 4th downs. They only punted the ball twice during the game. 3 times they lost the ball on turnover on downs, plus the 2 picks, 1 for 7 in the red zone, and also the pre-halftime snafu where they could have at least gotten some points, but they did not get any points because special teams and offense were on the field at the same time. And there was a 12-man penalty and a runoff. That always stinks. So, yeah, this is a box score where you look at it and be like, man, Detroit's a lot better than this. I'm not going to sit and downgrade them for one bad game where just everything that went wrong possibly did, where they played a lot better up front. So very frustrating game. Started that with a 0-1 on the live betting for me. Alex Anzalone was concussed, but he's day-to-day. It's sounding like he's doing better. They had a bunch of injuries, and none of them seemed super serious. Terry and Arnold had a finger thing that didn't seem to be a problem. St. Brown was a little more concerning. They said it was just maybe cramping, but then it was like, oh, this is a bruise. It's lower leg, soft tissue, just a bruise. He'll be fine. Hopefully he's fine. He matters a ton. And then the rookie Rakestraw did hurt his hamstring during warm-ups. I didn't have a ton more on that. Just worth monitoring. On the Tampa side, this is a weird one because if it's a receiver, this is like, hey, IL. But Vita Vea has like a grade 2 MCL sprain. It's like, he's day-to-day. He's not sprinting. He's a big guy in the middle. He might just play through this. So be interesting to see where they go with that. Rashad White was fighting a groin injury, but he seemed to be fine. Not a lot I'll have to say on that. Tampa Bay, big win for them. Maybe some luck, but you got to win games like that. If you want to have a good record, win your division. Indy 10, Green Bay 16. This was the Sharps versus Squares. There was people I respect saying, like, this is silly to be less than Indy -7. The market definitely disagreed with that sort of thing. This was a game I just couldn't get involved with, despite trying to make numbers for this. And it was game number 2 where it was like, hey, you should run the ball today, and maybe you'll just have a whole bunch of luck. They ran just like they should have. 53 of the 67 snaps were running plays. Jacobs had 32 for 151, had a ton in the first quarter, ton in the first half. His prop hit super easy. That was nice. And they did tighten things up. But at the same time, Willis was semi-impressive. He made, I mean, they weren't like, Sports Center top 10 throws, but he made a couple of throws into, decent coverage, converted, he threw a touchdown pass. It wasn't this, horrific monster of a, just team killing quarterback that we're all expecting to see, according to Twitter. And honestly, it was kind of what we got from Richardson this times, despite how good he was, on deep balls and what he can do with his legs. He had a couple of bad passes. Not sure what to do with Indy. Their defense, I think, is a lot worse. I am interested in them this week in a spot for. I did bet the under in their game coming up. I don't like the defensive coordinator. I don't like the scheme. I don't like the injuries, but I think they can still manage against a much weaker opponent, especially in the running game. DeForest Buckner's going to miss time with the ankle. Latu hip injury, that's more tests. Josh Downs missed the game again, the wide receiver out for the Indy. And then for Green Bay, Marshawn Lloyd, the young running back, exited with an ankle injury, as did their guard, Jordan Morgan, with a shoulder. Keep an eye on that. A game I admittedly did not watch almost any of. The only time I caught this was on Red Zone. It's still on my list of things to watch. Was the Jets winning 24-17. I think part of me was just too jilted, scorned by Tennessee to possibly watch them play again. Maybe I'm over it now, but I will watch it. My big takeaway is from just reading, recaps, catching a little bit of clips here and there, and looking at the box score was Rodgers was protected. I mean, that was one of the big things everybody talked about preseason and last year preseason was like, how's he going to look behind this offensive line? They did a pretty good job, especially considering it was, one of the better defenses we saw last week. So he was protected. He still got enough left in the tank to beat teams like this. The Titans had 4 red zone trips, only got 1 touchdown, 1 field goal. In fact, that field goal was kicked outside the red zone because they got knocked back. The 2 other ended on a fumble and a downs, which was late in the game. They needed to be going for it. So they did move the ball a little better. Will Levis was not as bad against a defense we're super maybe out on a little. I'm not as sure as I was preseason where I have this Jets defense. Obviously, they had some injuries. Jermaine Johnson, pass rusher, torn Achilles, done. CJ Mosley left the game with a toe injury. We'll see where that goes. DJ Reader and Michael Carter, both corners, were injured at some point. So all of the stuff we need to watch for them is on the defensive side of the ball. Tennessee really didn't have injuries. Tajay had an ankle. He's day-to-day. Sounds like the running backs will be fine. San Francisco, 17. Minnesota Vikings, 23. Flores cooked again, and it wasn't versus, a bad team. I don't know. We saw a lot out of Malik Neighbors now this week, and we think that's probably going to work. But first game wasn't really a huge test, I don't think, for the Minnesota defense last week. This was a test, even with CMC out. I mean, he schemed some stuff up that caused some problems. And Minnesota tried to give this back with some bad turnovers. I mean, it was – I don't want to call them bad turnovers, I guess. They were bad turnovers as far as where they were in the field and the game state. There are no good turnovers, really, but big play Fred Warner, man. I mean, that was I'd say highlight interception, but we had the highlight interception in the Bengals game. It was still a very good effort across the middle, and he forced the fumble on Aaron Jones. Both of those were drives that were probably going to end up with points. So those mattered a lot in getting them back in the game, but in the end, they didn't quite have enough with what the Vikings defense were doing against them. The big worry there was obviously losing Justin Jefferson at some point, calling it a quad bruise, contusion, day-to-day. Sounds like from his mouth, he's going to be fine. I'm not sure. I'm not super sure. These guys always say they're going to be fine, and then you end up with stuff like this where they miss a couple weeks. So if him and Addison are out, it's kind of a problem, despite, some of the good play we've seen from Sam Darnold playing a lot better football. So keep an eye on both of those. Obviously, the Addison stuff sounds like just he wasn't ready to practice last week. It just wasn't happening. If he gets into practice by like Wednesday or Thursday, even as limited, that's going to be big for this offense. If they both play, good. Edge rusher, the rookie Dallas Turner's day-to-day. He had something with his knee. Keep an eye on that too as he plays. And then the big news, which just popped, was the Debo injury. I didn't really catch that during the game. That was a strained calf. He's going to miss time. He's going to miss a couple weeks is what they're saying. I was way more concerned about Kittle. And when I was watching it, he went out on the golf cart to the locker room. They're saying it was cramps, just got an IV. Obviously, he scored. He looked good. But yeah, they did end up in the end losing a receiver. So Debo's going to miss some time. CMC on the IR, which is another at least 3 weeks. So we'll see what this offense looks like as it continues to have some issues. And I'm not sure what the timetable is on the rookie receiver after he was shot. He looked okay on the sidelines, but that doesn't mean he's in football shape right now. So, say another game I didn't watch a ton of, although it was frustrating seeing the scores because a secret pod play was a failure in the New England offense scoring too many points. My big takeaways from this, and this is on the rewatch list. I'm just going to hate every second of this game, but Patriots are running team. They're kind of Harbaugh light. It's looking like Chargers East, where, hey, we have a good enough defense. Hey, we have a running game. We have a couple running backs that can go. Brissett's good enough. Obviously, the Chargers have a much better quarterback, but they ran the ball very effectively. They still play good defense. A big takeaway from like the first couple weeks would be just I was worried that we'd see this big drop off in discipline, accountability, making the play, tackling, just everything discipline wise, losing your coach that had been there for a million years and is pretty good, but they looked pretty decent. They probably could have won this game. There was a big blocked kick late to set things up so they could score and get to overtime. It was really nice to see JSN get involved. Maybe this offense starts to click a little more for Grubb. It looks a little disjointed at times, but they got a lot out of Metcalf. They got a lot out of Njigba. And is that his middle name? Do I got to say Smith and Njigba? I think I do. I think I can't just say part of his last name. Yeah, I know. It'll be really funny if Tomlin wins Coach of the Year this year. I'll get to some more takes at that after I do some look ahead stuff. Not a lot of takeaways from there. It's still a work in progress in Seattle. That defense is starting to look nice at times, but I'm not sure they have all the pieces that McDonald needs to have it be really, really good. And, if Grubb can continue to bring all of the pieces they have into the passing game, it could be a dynamic offense. The running wasn't great. I'm sure the fantasy community was fine with Charbonneau's stat line if you're able to grab him and put him in, but, it wasn't good from a efficiency standpoint. He had a touchdown and not a ton of yards on the ground. New England had a linebacker, Juwan Bentley, have a shoulder injury. He should be good to go, but they also play on Thursday night. It's a short week for them. Keep an eye on that. And O'Shea Zimenez did not return. Another linebacker after suffering a knee injury. Seattle had a linebacker out. Jerome Baker had a hammy issue. Obviously, Fant and Kenneth Walker did not go. They're important pieces. Your tackle and your starting running back. Stuff to monitor for the week ahead. Oh, God. New York Jets, New York Giants, 18. Washington Commanders, 21. Had this over for a while. It looked like the number was going to land 43 and the number was going to matter. That would have hurt my heart more, I guess. But at the same time, I almost felt like people who got an early number should have been rewarded. Giants, I'm sure you've read a million tweets and anecdotes about this, about how unlikely this sort of loss was. To score 3 touchdowns, not give up a touchdown, and still lose the game is, if you told me that before the game, I would have had a hard time figuring out exactly how that happened. Just like how many field goals is that? I would have had to say at least 8. But obviously the kicker thing mattered a bunch. Not having someone to back him up, knowing he was coming into the game with an injury, doesn't seem like good planning or leadership. I don't think this front office / coaching staff might be getting on the hot seat a little quicker than we thought they might be. I watched a bunch of this, and Daniels did look good at times. He looked like a lot more of a quarterback than we've seen, but he also takes way too many hits. He might not survive as a human. And it's still, they're still just kind of easing him into this thing. He had 23 completions, 12 of them were behind the line of scrimmage. It is crossing the streets 100 times, but they did cross the street. They got into the red zone 6 times, and they kicked a field goal on every last one of those. They just did not score a touchdown. They could not, would not. It was a very frustrating game if you were honestly, if you were backing either team, it had to be terribly frustrating. If you had the over, it was maddening. But it was nice to see Neighbors go like, hey, this kid's going to be a full-on star. They're just going to feed him. So it'll be interesting to see which of him and Marvin Harrison ends up as the top rookie receiver at the end of the year. I didn't have a lot on Washington injuries, but Graham Gano is going to miss a few weeks. Like he messed his leg up pretty good when he hurt himself early. That is like, we're bringing kickers in. We got to figure something out for week 3. Neighbors was put in the protocol during the game, as in they checked him. He cleared it, obviously went back in. I don't know if that matters. Once they had some of those, once you get checked, I'm not sure if they keep a closer eye on you or not. Just something to look at. A game I did win a bet on, the Chargers beat the Carolina Panthers 26-3 and possibly ended a quarterback's career. Not in the way the Bills did, but he was benched. Obviously, we talked about that at the top. The Chargers just played bully ball. They even threw a little more than I thought they were going to, and it was obviously effective. This is a very, very bad team with Derek Brown missing. There's not a ton of good players on this defense. They have a couple of so-so receivers, but the quarterback is unwilling, unable, and just everyone else is unmotivated. It's got to be very frustrating to play on this team. This is one of my favorite unders. I joked that Carolina may not score. I was actually a little pissed they did score. I was mad that they had the one nice drive. The Chargers turned the ball over a couple times in some funny spots and still didn't matter. They covered big. This was one I almost played at game time. I don't love adding late. And I'd say I do keep track of this, and maybe I'd encourage you to do this too to kind of get a better feel for, your process. But I keep track of stuff I almost played when we're talking. And it's funny, like at the end of the year, it's like 50-50. I make as many good decisions on I should stay off this as I was like, oh, I missed a winner. I missed an easy winner. And I really looked hard at Chargers -4. Then this was not a week where it went 50-50. It was like everything I almost played won, which is almost more frustrating. It's like the scene from Casino where they mess with this airplane and he's not thinking he's winning so much a hand. He's worried about losing so much because he's under betting. So annoying, but it was nice to get an easy under. Harbaugh, as we mentioned last week, will practice at UNC Charlotte, where Biff, I don't know if I can, Poggy, I don't know how to say this guy's name. I've read it 100 times. His former assistant and associate head coach at Michigan is now the head coach. So he's got a buddy that is coaching down there. That's where they're going to stay and practice for the week before they head up to Los Angeles, Pittsburgh to play. Not a ton of injuries in this. Junior Colson, the linebacker for the Chargers, injured a hamstring. Following up on that, Herbert got his ankle rolled up on, but he seemed fine. Again, the foot and the ankle seemed all right. Cleveland, Jacksonville, 18-13 Cleveland. This was a terrible game to watch. And this was one where I had Cleveland +3. And I was getting heavy whiffs of Tennessee week 1. This was not pretty on either side. Browns won. I don't know if they should have. Browns covered. I'm not sure they should have. They were 2 for 14 on third down. They had 13 penalties for 100 yards, but they didn't turn it over. They took advantage of their one red zone trip and scored a touchdown. And they got a safety after a really good punt and somehow scraped this out. And that safety mattered because at the end, Jacksonville couldn't, kick a field goal to tie it. They needed to score a touchdown. And that's how we ended up with an 18-13 game. Watson looked better. Watson did look better, but as a whole, this offense has a long way to go because I'm not super impressed with parts of this Jacksonville defense. Obviously, they have the injury in the secondary. I can't remember what Josh Allen's new name is. If someone can remind me what he changed his name to, it's like Josh with another name, Allen. He was good. Like Josh Allen is maybe he was the better Josh Allen. I'm going to type this in, other Josh Allen. Josh Hines Allen. I'm going to have to remember that one. He had a nice game. But yeah, this was one where at the end of the day, too, it's like, man, why wasn't this a game I looked at for an under? Maybe I'll have to listen back to what we said about this. I think it was just so focused in on Cleveland being maybe closer to a pick 'em than the market was giving me there. So Evan Ingram, day-to-day, he was ruled out pre-game with the hamstring injury in warm-ups. Tank Bigsby, running back, Anton Harrison tackle, Cisco the safety, and Gabe Davis the wide receiver all had some injury concerns, but none seemed super concerning, worth checking up on. Reports out of Cleveland that Conklin and Willis, both tackles, Wills, will play this week. We'll see. We've heard that before. Njoku's getting closer. They said they won't rule him out for this weekend either. And they did lose a wide receiver, David Bell. Hip injury is going to require surgery, so he is done for the year as they get a little thinner at a spot where I'm not so sure they're thick. I haven't been impressed with Cooper. I think part of that is probably on, you don't have your starting tackles, your quarterback's playing kind of bad, you played a tough defense or two. We'll see how that goes. Vegas 23, Vegas 26, Baltimore 23. Crazy collapse for Baltimore, but it's only like the 8th one in the last 2 years, so I guess I should have seen it coming. Defense just didn't step up. But against Minshew, the offense couldn't close it out. 11 penalties for over 100 yards. But this was a 23-13 lead with 12 minutes left, and you lost in regulation. Kind of inexcusable for all of the, all parties involved. People are really going in on Monken for some of the play calling in the second half, but I don't know. I kind of got to give some credit to Minshew. He played really well against a tough team and got him there. I mean, so much was on him. They didn't run well. They didn't run much late at all. I mean, he just kind of carried them. It's going to be one of those where it's such a hard game going into next week now because you should probably fade a team like Las Vegas. They don't likely have a good coach. They don't likely have a good quarterback, and they just won an improbable game as like a 10-point dog. Boy, is it the wrong game to be fading them, most likely, although some people did do that. When it was 7 for Carolina, I know that's come down. Baltimore might get Nate Wiggins back this week. Kyle Van Noy played, even though I didn't think he would. He broke his face bone. He had a couple sacks. He played well. So tough guy Kyle Van Noy, we'll remember him as. And the Raiders did lose a linebacker late to a hip injury. Divine Diablo was injured. He's on my list of people to watch for this week. Arizona beat the ever-living shit out of the Rams. The Rams defense seemed to buy into the quote where Kyler said, "It's not my job to get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr." because they kind of let him get behind him a couple times. That touchdown pass at the boundary line at the end zone that was just amazing. Both ends, the throw and the catch. He was great. Didn't have to use a ton late because of the game state. This is a bad pass rush. This is a bad defense, and the Rams still took 5 sacks. They're missing a ton up front. That stinks, but you need to scheme something better than that. The game state kind of doomed you in that case. They were outgained by 200 yards, just never had a chance. I mean, game got out of hand in a hurry, put them in a bad spot, the worst spot you wanted to be when you're missing a bunch of offensive linemen and your second best, or maybe your best receiver to some people. 211 on third, 1 for 3 on fourth. They gave up 7.9 yards per play, and something called Dennis Gardick had 3 sacks for Arizona. Bad job, and it got worse. Cooper Kupp in a walking boot. He's going to miss time. John Johnson, safety, hairline fracture. He's going to miss 4 to 6. Guard Jonah Jackson broke his shoulder blade. He's on the IR, almost certainly. And the kicker got dinged up. I think he's going to be all right, but it was just raining and pouring. I will say there's some good news. Alaric Jackson is unsuspended. He only had a 2-week suspension, so they do get one person back. And here's a stat from Berto. 0-2 teams have a 5% chance to make the playoffs. Yeah, there's a bunch of 0-2 teams that were, favorites to win their division or minus money to go to the playoffs. So be curious to look at some of those lines. I think maybe we'll bring that up Wednesday. A couple games left. Pittsburgh, Denver, terrible game. 2 pretty good defenses at times. Awful, awful offenses. Tough to watch. Tough to watch. Knicks is rough. But kind of, getting thrown into this, these weren't easy defenses to play. This was a big test. It's just he was pretty inaccurate at times, even when he wasn't under pressure, which was annoying. As anyone who had Denver in a teaser did get there. But boy, it didn't feel like they were it just didn't feel like they were going to score at all, especially down 13 late, 4th and 6 on like the 15-yard line. Peyton kicks the field goal to go down, 2 scores from being down 2 scores. Never want to see that. That sucks. At that point, any chance of some long shot plays on the Broncos. I know a bunch of people had round robins. The round robins in the Discord were amazing because a lot of them were Bucks, Broncos, Raiders, and kind of can't think of the 4th one. Browns. It was Browns, Bucks, Raiders, Broncos. And I wish I could remember who had that one. So it was a nasty number they used a bonus on, or a boost. I just had Bucks, Browns, Broncos in a round robin. It would have been nice to get that home. Getting 2 out of the 3. I try to bet it. So if I get 2 out of the 3, I'm not sitting there taking a loss for picking 2 underdog winners, right? So wasn't the end of my betting day, but it would have been nicer to get that one home. Your leading rusher for Denver was at 25 yards. They really couldn't get anything going up front against this Pittsburgh D. Javonte Williams ran 11 times for 17 yards. There wasn't a ton of help for Knicks, so maybe I shouldn't kick him while he's down. There were 2 for 12 on 3rd down, 9 penalties for 124 yards, 2 turnovers. Their best drive ended in an interception in the end zone. It was a tough hang. They did lose Mike McGlinchey. He's going to miss some time. They had a defensive end, Franklin Myers, concussed. Baron Browning hurt his foot. They had a special teams player hurt his ankle. They all left. Bowles was back, which is important, but they lost the other tackle now. So McGlinchey, it's sounding like might lose a month, which is not good for a rookie quarterback, but brighter days ahead as they don't have to play the Steelers every week. Pittsburgh had one injury to a linebacker late. Hamstring is all the injuries this week. Tyler Matakevich pulled a hamstring late. Kansas City, Cincy. This was fun, wasn't it? This was live bet too, which is I have a secret formula that I shouldn't even give this away. I will bet the Chiefs money line when it's low, for them to come back and win games. Or sometimes, it's just a close game. When it gets under minus 150, sometimes I'll bet the Chiefs money line. I'm not sure a lot of people have tried that out. Sneaky spot there. Probably lucky to get that one home and end up 1-1 on the live bets. Kansas City did it late. Where have you seen that before? They lost the turnover battle 3-1, still ended up with the ball at the end to win. Everybody complaining about the pass interference at the end. Baffling. He was clearly there early. Like, that was 100% a penalty. That's always a penalty. Like, that not getting called is a way bigger crime. The one you should complain about is the fumble. It's like they just said, whatever, it's probably good. I never saw a good angle of the Burrow fumble that clearly showed it was out. I don't know if there was stuff after the game or if somebody has some clips they can share. But like in real time watching the game, it's like they're able to buzz the announcers and be like, hey, don't bring this up. Just don't even dig into this. Like, leave this alone. It was a fumble. It's a touchdown. It's fine. I thought for sure they were going to whistle that. So that was a big play. That was a massive play that they didn't seem to want to take a look at. Maybe I'm in the wrong there, and it was clearly a fumble, but I was sketched out by that at the time, even holding the Chiefs ticket. So I would love to know what Jamar Chase said to the ref. You don't see that too often. You'll see the flag on hitting opponent, making contact with the ref, but this is like, just mouthing off. And then he went back for seconds. He went back for seconds after the ref told him not to. And Burrow, I probably blame Burrow. He needed to be stronger in that spot and drag his ass back to the huddle. Because when he went back for seconds, that's when he got popped for the penalty. That was a big penalty. But yeah, I'd be dying to know exactly what he said or what he called that ref. And yeah, Kansas City gets it done. Huge win. Cincinnati goes to 0-2. We have the like Berto said, it's a long way to the top for Baltimore and Cincy. Luckily, they're in a division with, a couple teams that are struggling to find an offensive identity, and they get to play those teams a bunch. Pacheco, fibula, sidelined for 6 to 8 weeks. Not sure what they're going to do there. They bring in Kareem Hunt. That doesn't sound super exciting for anybody other than, if you have a Joe or a Patrick Mahomes full season yardage over, he might just be having to throw more. Supposedly good news for Higgins. The extra day helps. That D-line did get beat up. It's still beat up. Sheldon Rankins left the game with a hammy. That defense continues to struggle and get hurt. Not good looking forward for them as they are 0-2. And then last night, ugly game. Felt like it was dominated by Houston at times. As I've said numerous times, and a couple people, I was impressed with the second half adjustments for the Bears on defense. I don't think they have a lot going right now on offense with that offensive line, but they brought some pressure looks in the second half that made a difference in that game. And this was another one where, betting on the NFL is riding the razor's edge. They were about to go up 3 scores with like 7 minutes left. They were up, was it 19, 16, 10, 19? Yeah, it was. I think they could have had a 3-score lead with a 2-point conversion. I have to go look at the math. Either way, there was the fumble. They had to be up 19-16 at that point. They're about to go up big. And Akers fumbles because Mixon got hip dropped, butterfly effect, and suddenly in for a game, and the number mattered, which pissed me off because it was 5.5 at the close, and I had 6. I'm not sure what Eberflus is doing on reviews. Both of those were just any chat, any Discord you're in was laughing immediately when he called those reviews. Those were pretty bad. Mixon's hurt his ankle. We'll see how that goes. Juice Scruggs missed the game with the groin injury. Jared Patterson snapped in his place. The only other thing I had was Williams getting hit hard. He's getting hit hard a bunch. He took a nasty sack or two. The O-line is an issue. The guard is horrible. Warren Sharp posted that clip of him whiffing on 2 guys, getting downfield and whiffing on 2 more, which was pretty funny, but it's not funny if you're Williams or if you're a Bears fan or a Bears better. That was bad. And there was bad blitz pickup, bad blocking by the running backs. The Komet, I think it was Will Anderson. Komet needed to chip him and just barely got a little bit of shoulder, and he goes in and sacks him. There was some bad coverage. They couldn't do the handoff on anytime they ran any sort of stunt. Like, there's just not a lot of continuity or skill right now on the offensive line, which is bad. It's quickly turning into maybe this isn't such a good situation he landed into after all. So we'll see how it goes from here on out. Ugly game. Zach Pickens was hurt for the Bears. Defensive lineman with a groin injury. Keenan Allen didn't play with a heel injury. We'll see what that looks like going forward. Decent betting week. Not great. Well, could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot better. I think that's the NFL. You're going to lose one game every week. That drives you nuts. Quick looking at the look-ahead numbers. If you follow me on Twitter, I did tweet out. Well, I had some bangers today, too. I had to actually mute one. It's the fun part about having a tweet that gets a bunch of attention. You have to mute it. Otherwise, your phone, you're just not getting any work done that day. But I did tweet out that I bet the Bears under. I did tweet out that I bet the Chargers. If you read the newsletter, I did bet the Chargers and look ahead, smaller bets. My look aheads were Buffalo -3.5, Chargers +2.5, and Colts -2.5. Obviously, the Buffalo number looks a lot better now. The Chargers number looks a little better, and the Colts number is a little worse. A little worse. Now I'm double involved in that game, but I do like that under. Like I said, it's weakness on weakness. I'm not big on the Colts defense, but with this offensive line, I think they're going to be fine. Gus Bradley's not going to get exposed this week, so I thought that total should be closer to 42. And I do like the matchup a ton with what Harbaugh's done, what they've quickly put together. It's crazy how it's like you bring somebody in and you got to establish this new identity. It's like they just put on the mask and they're there. This is a bullying team. This is a really good pass rush. This is a good front. They've done a lot of good things defensively, and they're a pretty good running team who has a quarterback they can rely on if they need him to get him there. So pretty impressed with the Chargers, and I took them on the money line. Just from the top, where's Thursday night? Thursday night, like I said, Jets, New England. I'm not super excited about that. The total, the look at on that total is like 40. It's down 37.5 right now. It looks like that's another one too, where the the look at was a little bigger. That's some Patriots money has come in. It's down to 6. Some places had 7 last week. I understand that, but at the same time, the Jets have looked a little better on offense, and I think that was always going to take time. Not super interested in there, even though I do show maybe the Jets should still be favored by about 7. I'm going to have to look at my numbers on them as I maybe have to do a little more upgrading on New England. I did light touch stuff today. Didn't do too much. Detroit, Arizona, that look ahead was 51.5 in the total, about the same now. The side was 4.5. That's down to, we had 2.5 still. That's one where there's been, it's 2.5, but it's expensive. It's basically 2.75 stuck in there. Detroit has to travel. I think if you want to fade a hot team who got a really good situation with a team who really probably could have put up about 30 more points last week, this is maybe a spot where you do take an ugly road dog here in Detroit while they're under 3. I'll have to see what I do with my upgrades. Right now, I think it should be on the other side of 3, but these are light numbers that I haven't fully adjusted yet. Nothing real situational there. Giants, Cleveland. That should be a terrible game. That's another one, too, where I have my Cleveland number a little high again. I think this is another spot where I might bet Cleveland. This total's been bet down about a point off the look ahead, half point off the opener. 39, I think, for the most part, is where we opened. That is down a half point, and the side was 6.5. Little Giants money coming in. Probably not a super exciting market for a lot of people to get involved in. Depends what you think of, I guess, Malik Neighbors and how he matches up against this defense, because this is another one where I'm looking at a bigger favorite to bet, which is not fun in a year where they're not covering and nobody's scoring enough points. So laying 6 in a total of 38.5 sounds like maybe a shitty idea for me. New York Giants are on their second straight road game, and they have Thursday night football next week. So kind of a dumb spot for them with the extra travel and then looking at a short week against a divisional opponent in Dallas. Move to the Dallas game. That look ahead, kind of right around pick both ways. It looks like it was maybe -1, flip to Dallas, +1 right now. Maybe I just didn't put my minus in there, but Dallas is a short road dog to the scuffling Baltimore Ravens. I don't have a strong opinion either way on this. I'm kind of out on what Baltimore's deciding to do on offense, but I'm kind of there with Dallas too. I looked at this over, but they're kind of untrustworthy offenses right now as far as finishing drives with their skill position players. So not a lot of opinion there. Chicago's on its second straight road game. Heading to Indy, like I said, I bet that under. Some people got 44.5. It opened pretty high. We're down, 43 at this point, maybe even lower at some places. Let's see, 42.5 at a few places. So I think it should be under 42. I bet under 43.5 this morning. Look ahead was 2.5. It's 2. Richardson's kind of boom or bust, which is a scary proposition to bet the side or total, I guess. we'll see what we can dial up. Like I said, I was kind of impressed with the Bears' defensive adjustments. If they can do that sort of thing and take away the deep ball, make Richardson beat them with finesse, let him get a few rushing yards, stop drives, I think the Bears can end up at 2-1 here, which would be quite the coup for them, all things considered. The Niners, with all their injuries, get to face an even more injured team, divisional foe. Total hasn't moved much off the 45, but the side is much different. This is one I did put in the newsletter as hey, I thought about betting the Rams at 4.5. I couldn't do it considering the opponents, and I did think the Niners would win. I thought the Rams would lose, so I thought it'd move that way. I didn't think Minnesota would look that way, but I mean, between losing and looking that bad and having so many injuries, being without your top two receivers, you're going to see a big move here. I'm not sure who's going to take the swallow the pill and bet plus 7.5. It's a ton of points for a divisional home dog. Still has a good coach. We said Debo and CMC aren't there. The value is almost certainly on the Rams at this point. I might have to take that dive. I don't know. I'm gonna have to read a little more, but maybe I'm gonna need like a pep talk from McVay. He's got to say something that convinces me, but almost certainly value at that price, which stinks. San Francisco, like I mentioned, this is their second straight week on the road, but it's not a big trip down the coast. Vegas, Carolina, you saw the big movement in the market there today. That was 7. Has to hurt just terrible if somebody were able to like explain that to him. I doubt Bryce Young knows a ton about the betting markets, but to see it go from like 7 to 5.5 like that because you got benched, see the total go up. This look ahead was 40.5. It dropped down. It went back up when Andy Dalton was, named the starter here. So we'll see how that goes. It's a couple of teams that I'm now looking to back, looking to fade them both, which I guess maybe means another under. But once I started to look at Andy Dalton and how bad this Carolina defense is and Minshew and what he was able to do with his arm against a much better defense, I looked at that 39.5 and I almost played an over today. So I'll be keeping an eye on that price. See, there was some buyback after it got a little out of hand. Flat 40 is an interesting number. Minnesota caught some money after Houston looked a little limp in the second half, and Minnesota obviously got a big win. That's down to 2.5. That was 4 on the look ahead, 4 on the open. This total's been bet down as I think maybe what we saw in that second half from Houston, playing a better defense in Minnesota. I guess I understand that move. No interest for me there. If I had to bet it, I would say I show value on Minnesota straight up. Philly, New Orleans, that'll be short rest for them, but we need to see them play today. Same thing, I'll just mention Kansas City, Atlanta. That's going to be short rest for Atlanta as well, obviously, too, heading home, but hosting Kansas City. They play in like 40 minutes. Chargers, Pittsburgh, we already mentioned. It is a second straight roadie, but they're staying east. The total opened 37.5 after it was 38.5 on the look ahead, dropped all the way down to 35.5. As the kind of ball that these two teams play is conducive to an under. And 35.5 might not be low enough. Not a ton of movement on the side. Like I said, I did bet the Chargers straight up here. I think all things considered, they just have a matchup advantage. They have the better quarterback. They have the better running game. They have, maybe better receivers as a group. Pickens is great, but if you can take him away, what we've seen from the pass rush and some of the coverage guys for Chargers, I think it's coming along nicely, this rebuild under Harbaugh. So that's a look I took. Miami, Seattle, extra large rest coming off Thursday Night Football for Miami, but starting Skyler, which is hard to price. Totals down a little. Obviously, the sides moved about 6.5 points off the look ahead. That's probably fair. That's about where I'm at. I think this should be about a 5-point game. It is 5.5, depending where you're looking. So I'm fine just staying away from this. It'll be interesting to see what we do with Skyler, because it does feel like there's a path to giving him the easy button with all these players that can make things happen in space. Achane, Waddle, Tyreek. Something to watch for because, like I said, the Seattle defense looks good at times, but it's still a work in progress. Denver, Tampa, not much moving on the total. That's 40, open 39.5. Obviously, Tampa has taken some money. That was 3 to 5 on the look ahead / openers. Tampa's well loved. I got to look at this price. I got to look at my sheet here. No way that was a pick somewhere. That's just a bad read. So, yeah, this did open 7. I'm not sure what this odd screen is showing me right now. So I guess it is just kind of maintaining the 7. Denver is doing the early game as they're not an East Coast or West Coast team, but they are traveling a long way to play an early game as a mountain team, usually plays the 3 o'clock games. And they're traveling to, maybe it'll be hot. I'll have to check the weather there in Tampa Bay. Not a great travel spot for them coming off a very physical game. I make this 7.5. I'm pretty close to the number. If there's a bunch of money that wants to come in against Tampa after kind of a bad performance, I might consider it. If it goes the other way, I might consider it as a teaser. I'm going to have to kind of keep an eye on the injuries and see what the market sentiment is and see if somebody can talk me into it one way or the other. Green Bay, Tennessee is the Malik Willis revenge game, instant revenge game, as he was traded, signed, acquired by Green Bay in the offseason to back up, and now he instantly gets to go face his old team. This is a better defense than Indy. I don't think they're going to give up 200 yards rushing in the first half. It's a much better matchup on that side of the ball, but they have a very unknown quantity at quarterback too. Like I said, Willis played better this week, but it's still not good. And this Green Bay defense is good in certain spots. So it's a home game. It's a weird number because just looking at it preseason, what this number should have been, could have been, would have been, I want to say it was probably Green Bay -4. I'll have to look at my preseason numbers made it, but Tennessee is laying 3. Even with Willis, I'm not so sure. I'm excited about laying points against Malik Willis here as they kind of worked around him last week. And like I said, he made a few throws. It wasn't that bad. Sunday night is the Atlanta KC game. We'll talk about that Wednesday. Monday night is a doubler. So just 2 quick ones here. Jacksonville, Buffalo. Like I said, lots and lots and lots of rest for Buffalo. They're coming off the Thursday night, going into the Monday night. So they have the extra rest. They're not going against a team that has, a short week, like the what do we call it, the Widowmaker spot. But they are getting a much bigger rest spot than Jacksonville after they came off a bad loss. I make this number bigger than what it is right now. Like I said, I bet this in the look ahead, but like Houston, I'm probably going back for more at 5. I think this should be a touchdown. I'm going to continue to play the folly of betting big favorites this year, even though none of them cover. Someday, Andy, they will. But at 5, I'm in on Buffalo. Despite the defensive injuries, I don't believe Jacksonville has. Maybe the quarterback right now, with some of the things I'm seeing from him, to get back and stay close in this game. The other Monday night is Washington Cincy. I'm not sure we thought that was a good idea. Cincy -7.5. That was a look ahead 47, open 47, up to 48. I get that total move. I think if anything, I'd like that over, but pretty jilted from this week. Probably not going to get involved with them for a second time. I'm very close on that number. The Cincinnati defense is bad, though. I want to make some comparisons. I want to watch some film on Cincy defense. Even being close to the number, I'm on the other side of 7. I'm like 6.9, not just being internet gross. So I wonder if this continues to trend and you can get a good flat 8 for like -105. I might be taking Washington. We'll obviously see what Higgins' status is too. That matters a lot versus this bad secondary. If I missed any games, yell at me. I think I hit them all. Real quick, some of the starred comments before I go. What do I think of Kareem Hunt back in Kansas City? I don't think there's anyone on the market that can replace Pacheco. I think that's pretty easy to say. It's not a hot take. It's going to be running back by committee. So I think they bring him in. He's going to be, you know, a small factor. I'm not sure how long until CEH is off the IR. I feel like that has to be, after week 4 if he started on the pup. So, yeah, it's going to be running back by committee. Carson Steele isn't set up to be a 3-down back. Samaj Perine, I don't think he is either. So it's probably going to just be a combination of whoever they sign in those two and maybe just more throwing. What if Drew was late to the Coach of the Year? That would be super funny. Awards takes, I haven't looked at prices a ton. I think if you're betting Saquon to score tonight, like if you're laying whatever minus 200 in a SGP, you should take a few bucks and put it on him to be an offensive player of the year too. Money sits for a little longer. But man, if he keeps scoring, if they truly are looking at putting less wear and tear on Hurts on the short yardage stuff, he ends up with like 25 touchdowns or something ridiculous. He might just win it, especially with some of the injuries to the wide receivers and none of them being crazy impressive at this point. I am out on all the quarterbacks for Rookie of the Year. I think it might be, somebody can surprise me yet. If it were anyone, I'd be saying it'd be Daniels of the 3 right now, because of his situation and some of the potential you see. But man, it might just be Neighbors and Harrison eventually here for Rookie of the Year, because they're both just getting volume, and some of Harrison's volume is just deep stuff. But man, if they keep putting up 40% of what they did last week and do it throughout the year, that's a good rookie year. With how often Cleveland plays cover 1, the assumption Jags were going to get vertical probably had something to do with keeping off that under. I don't love using tendency stuff and what they play defensively, because you see so many teams switch that week in and week out. And I've seen people get burnt on that where, they play, they use a lot of cover 1 or they use a lot of too high. And then you see good to even mediocre defensive coordinators start to switch that stuff around when it matters. But I mean, a kind of a reductionist take on what you're saying is like, I kind of thought that they would be able to beat the Browns deep once or twice. I thought we'd see some better intermediate to deep stuff. I thought we'd see better offenses on both sides. I was super surprised at how shitty they both looked against each other. I was thinking it was going to be a bunch of Cleveland looks really good on a defensive drive, 3-4 of those, and then you get one where they get popped. And I guess there was some of that late, but yeah, I don't know what to make of the Jaguars offense right now. I think they might need to hit the reset button for the 15th time here in the last few years. That's it. I think that's everything. I think I'm going to call it a stream, just under an hour. Pretty happy. Yeah, Watson did look a little calmer at least. Yeah, Penix could be the first rookie quarterback to throw a touchdown this year. That would be something. You never know. Kirk could get hit hard. If I missed anything, hit me up on Twitter. Hit me in the comments on here. I put it in the newsletter. Hit the like button, obviously. Hit the subscribe. It's even better. I did put it in the newsletter. I hate not having anything. I like to put a prop in there or something. So I did like the look of Goddard getting the ball a bunch here. I think you really focus in on just taking away Devonta and making him hit the stuff underneath. So I played him in receptions over, yardage over, and just to score a touchdown at like 2-1. So they're missing an inside linebacker. The coverage grades for most of those guys in the second unit isn't good. I think Terrell is going to be mainly focused on one guy. So I think they'll be able to attack some of the other guys in the intermediate, find some holes in the zones. And Goddard can probably eat. We'll see. It'll probably be the other tight end, which will drive me up a wall. I did play some Saquon receiving over stuff and like SGPs and underdog stuff as well. So, yeah, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, rate, review, enjoy it. I'll see you at halftime. Special guest again. The Wednesday show will almost certainly be happening at 1 p.m. Eastern. So Drew is awake and alive. maybe a little shorter because he might not be in the loop as much. I'm going to try to put in extra effort this week on research to help him along, to carry him on Wednesday. But unless you hear otherwise, that's what he said would be a good time. I let him land and like get a lay of the land and decide, like, are you still sure? Noon Central, is that what you want to do? So most likely, but I'll let you know. We'll tweet that out. I'll put it in the Discord. When we get there, I'm going to hit the music and we're going to play me out. I'm going to drink some water. Jesus. No, fucking Chernoff does this. Just talk and talk and talk by yourself. Some of these guys do, like Howard. Does hours of this stuff. I need a lozenge.